Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Always grateful. Macro thoughts start with an article by Mohammed El-Erian, Market Calm May Be Short-Lived. The world is experiencing policy and economic realignments that undermine two notions that have served buy and hold investors well in the last few years, that global growth, while low, remains relatively stable, and that systemically important central banks continue to be both willing and able to repress financial volatility and boost financial asset prices. This paradigm is coming to an end. Moreover, what may follow is far from predestined, depending in large part on whether politicians are able to bring about the much-needed hands-off from excessive reliance on central banks to a broader policy response. In the meantime, we all better get ready for the return of greater financial market volatility. Volatility has been unprecedented in 2016. I like this photograph of monks meditating at the temple before the morning alms offering ceremony marking the day of Makabucha, which is a day that honors Buddha and his teachings and falls on the full moon day of the third lunar month. I like this photograph from San Dave 69, beautiful sunrise in Nairobi. My piece over the weekend was written in the Z-Bar at the Fairmont Mount Kenya Safari Club, helped with lashings of ginger and carrot juice and a rather good sparkling white wine. The sunrise tinted the clouds one morning. Luckily got this photograph and I'm still rather pleased with it. It was William Holden, who was the best man at Ronald Reagan's wedding to Nancy Davis, who founded the Mount Kenya Safari Club in Nanyuki in 1959. From there I take it to William Burroughs, circa 1975, who famously said, "Hustlers of the world, there is one mark you cannot beat, the mark inside." I like this quote, "Smash the control images, smash the control machine. The dream is a spontaneous happening, therefore dangerous to a control system set up by the non-dreamers." I like this photograph from The Guardian, Mary Ellen Mark, photographed by Mary Ellen Mark, kind of caught my attention. Reverend Sharpton says Trump is the white Don King. The best way I can describe Donald Trump to friends is to say if Don King had been born white, he'd be Donald Trump, says Sharpton with a broadening smile. Both of them are great self-promoters and great at just continuing to talk even if you're not talking back. Put up a photograph of Don King. It says if you want to sell a steak, you can't just have the sizzle, you've got to have sauce. US is urging a wider challenge to China's claims in the South China Sea. Beijing has been angered by air and sea patrols the US has conducted near islands China claims. Those have included one by two B-52 strategic bombers in November, and by a US Navy destroyer that sailed within 12 nautical miles of Triton Island in the Paracels Group last month. US official told reporters it would be valuable if Australia and others sent warships to conduct similar operations within 12 nautical miles of disputed territories. What we're trying to ensure is that all countries, no matter size or strength, can pursue their interests based on the law of the sea and not have that endangered by some of these actions. Tensions between China and its neighbors have risen further since Taiwanese and US officials said last week Beijing placed surface-to-air missiles on Woody Island, part of the Paracels archipelago it controls. And then an interesting piece by Gertz in Asia Times, blurred lines, China's competition with US resembles low-level warfare. The era of US government policies designed to play down or dismiss growing strategic challenges from China seems to be ending. For the first time in years, the nation's most senior intelligence official revealed that China now poses a regional security threat, engaged in hostile activities that blur the line between war and peace. James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, testified before the US Senate that the threat from Beijing is not limited to the large-scale build-up of both strategic nuclear and conventional forces. It includes new forms of competition involving information operations, cyber attacks, intelligence activities, and other non-kinetic forms of warfare. To avoid triggering a shooting war with the US, the Chinese are engaging in new types of low-level conflict. They will almost certainly eschew direct military conflict with the US in favor of contests at lower levels of competition, to include the use of diplomatic and economic coercion, propaganda, cyber intrusions, proxies, and other indirect applications of military power that intentionally blur the distinction between peace and wartime operations, Clapper said. The intelligence leader's testimony appears to signal the beginning of a new era of realism towards China. On the 2nd of December 2013, when the US flew a B-52 over the ADIZ, I said, given that the trajectory is one of gradual erosion of that decisive advantage, leads me to the view that this pivot to Asia has a logic and momentum of its own. Therefore, I see the US being increasingly determined to press its advantage. One might even posit that calming down the Iranian front allows the US to better concentrate its energies on the pivot to Asia. Two photographs, one of an island in the South China Sea. You can see the amount of work the Chinese are doing, and another photograph of Woody Island in the disputed Paracel chain. China has deployed surface-to-air missiles on the disputed island in the South China Sea. Came across this comment from Moulding in Bloomberg. I'm very concerned about the House of Saud losing its grip on power under financial stress and budget cuts and sending the whole region into chaos, and I think that is the big risk. A planned ceasefire to end the bloodshed in Syria will come into effect on the 27th of February. The US and Russia have announced. Vladimir Putin hailed the agreement with optimism, describing it as a real step forward that can stop the bloodshed, and saying Moscow would use its influence on President Assad to try to make sure it is observed. The proof will be the pudding and its eating. A poster in Lubil featuring Vladimir Putin, Bashar al-Assad, and Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah. And I like this photograph that Anika posted of President Obama. I don't know when it was, but it's rather an attractive one. Holger tweeted Europe's distribution of negative debt. It's an extraordinary scenario. Have a look at this image. I wrote about this on the 1st of February when I talked about currency puzzles and negative interest rates. Holger very kindly posted currency returns year to date. Look at the yen. The euro is at 110.39, dollar index 97.33, Japanese yen 112.13. 110.99 is the high for the year for the yen. Pound 141.04. Aussie getting a little bit of a balance, 0.7234. 294, Indian rupee 68.635, South Korean won 1231.42. The real is back below 4, 394.71. Egyptian pound 72.96, but it's at 9 on the parallel market. And the rand much further at 15.2294. That's on expectations of rate hikes coming out of the SARB. Sterling, I'll put up a 5-day chart. I think it targets 136.50. Look at this trade weighted sterling index, but this was midday yesterday, hitting a 15-month low, 86 on Brexit next. And I think it's a poor decision to take it to a referendum, because I think it's more than likely that in the referendum people will choose to leave the euro, and I think that's ultimately a bad decision. Dollar yen, let me put up a 3-month chart. You will remember from the beginning of the year I was predicting 105. It doesn't look that far away now. China's trilemma makes it vulnerable to more shocks, says George Backus. Have a look at the exponential deterioration in reserves in this image. Currently running at $100 billion a month. Gold, 1218.35, obviously a proxy like the Japanese yen, and signaling to us that we might be headed higher again on gold and on the yen. Crude oil had a big day yesterday, rallied sharply, last trading at $32.83, but the key level is $35. Moving on to Africa, the African Development Bank's Adesina call was said at this Egyptian investment conference about Africa: bring down these walls, think, act, and deliver big. There is no doubt an open Africa will be an unstoppable Africa. Breaking down the barriers is the key to Africa's long-term growth and prosperity. Your Excellencies, bring down those walls. Adesina was firm that the Africa Rising story is not over, despite the economic headwinds that the continent is facing from the decline in the price of oil, mineral and agricultural commodities. China's slowdown too has complicated the current account and currency positions of many African countries. We must not believe the narrative of doom and gloom on Africa, he said. Well, he should be the cheerleader, shouldn't he? Wall Street Journal, an interesting piece: Africa bruised by investor exodus, crashing commodity prices, Chinese slowdown, and a string of policy failures are forcing investors to reassess the risk of investing in Africa after years of optimism about its growth prospects. Stock markets, currencies have been selling off across the continent. Nigeria is one of the world's worst performing stock indices this year, down by 14% since the start of 2016. S&P Nigeria BMI index lost more than 1/4 of its value last year as measured in dollars, 10 percentage points more than the average frontier market index the company tracks. Zambia's fared even worse over the past year, plunging 45%. President Edgar Lungu last September called for a day of national prayer to petition God to shore up Zambia's currency. The declines mean African equities are performing worse than any other frontier markets. The MSCI Africa Index tumbled 19% last year, significantly more than the overall MSCI Frontier Markets Index. Outlook could get darker. The IMF in January warned the continent would on average grow by 4% this year. That looks high, sharply below trend growth over the past decade. Fund managers say assets in African nations are being punished because of their disproportionate reliance on resources and failure to use the commodity boom of recent years to industrialize their economies. In Angola, Nigeria, and Equatorial Guinea, oil accounts for more than 90% of export revenue. There's a reaction to a year ago to the euphoria of new investors coming into Africa since Stuart Culverhouse of exotics. They're trying to get out now and they're being quite indiscriminate. Upshot is that frontier investors are moving their money from Africa to Asian countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, net energy and commodity importers. But saying the investor exodus is already hitting African companies adjusting to the sharp reversal in sentiment. Shift has also pushed up the costs of sovereign borrowing, even as African countries slow down their issuance of bonds in international capital markets. In 2014, African sovereigns issued $12 billion worth of bonds. Last year was half that, according to Deutsche Bank. Although some of Africa's most rapidly growing economies are being roiled by market turbulence, there are important exceptions to the rule. Kenya, which is a much more diversified economy, and Ivory Coast, the world's top producer of cocoa, are still attracting frontier investors. What we're getting is what you're getting increasingly is a more sophisticated asset allocation within the frontier markets class that will benefit Kenya, Tanzania, and other commodity and energy importers, I said. Africa's countries can no longer depend on a booming export market for resources to China. Africa will have to depend on its greatest asset, its pool of young, bright, driven people. I've said that before. Business, that's Bloomberg, is talking about how African markets catching bear fever. It's saying how the capital markets have not grown at all. Combination of weaker currencies, falling asset values are hammering stock markets. Nigeria has seen the market capitalization of its bourse half in dollar terms since the end of 2013. It's now barely a tenth of Singapore's level and half Colombia's. Sub-Saharan Africa was the most buoyant region in 2015. After emerging Asia, its growth dipped to 3.5%, the slowest since 2009. 634 days ago, I was at a conference, an Africa Rising conference held by the IMF and the government of Mozambique, and I took a photograph of the poster, and it was Africa Rising, and I said, but no longer in the rising tide floats all boats' way it was in 2012 and 2013. And earlier this year, I wrote a piece about Kenya and East Africa on the up, as the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa slumps. Take a look at that. I said, for a while I've been saying that Kenya and East Africa looks like a bright star in what increasingly looks like a darkening Sub-Saharan African sky. I was talking about how I expect Nigeria and South Africa to grow at 0%, and how I thought that Angola was an uncharted, possibly revolutionary territory. Kizza Besigye was bundled into a police van as he attempted to leave his Kasangati home yesterday, detained by police as a preventative security measure on Monday, police said. Today, Besigye had mobilized a group of youth to storm the Electoral Commission. Weird information they had planned to cause violence in the city. President Museveni is obviously not going to go. He's going to come down hard on Besigye. Besigye clearly has a big following amongst the youth and in urban areas, but it's not clear to me what the actual votes were. I suspect it was a lot closer than it officially declared. Ban Ki-moon is due to meet Nkurunziza on Tuesday after arriving late on Monday. It's not immediately clear what plan Ban Ki-moon will bring to stem the violence, if any. President Zuma Van Rooyen was the most qualified for the finance minister job. You know Van Rooyen is my comrade. MK Umkhonto wa Sizwe, for that matter, where I come from, is a trained finance and economic comrade, more qualified than any minister I've ever appointed there in the finance issue. Imagine if I'd appointed a fellow who looks after cattle at Kandla as finance minister. I said on the 14th of December that markets are not interested in Zuma's explanations. They are seeing a South African president who has gone rogue. And I think indeed that comment confirms that President Zuma, I put up a photograph of him watching as Desmond Van Rooyen is sworn in by the judge, Virginia Kampepe. South African oil shares down 3.12% this year. Dollar rand has strengthened to 15.2294. Interest rate hikes expected and supporting. Have a look at this photograph of the front row at the Sharm el Sheikh Africa 2016 Forum. The Egyptian EGX30 is down 13.13% this year. Nigeria's Naira firmed sharply to 375 on the parallel market on Monday after importers started to reduce demand for dollars following the president's defiance over devaluing the currency. My conclusions are it won't last. The Nigerian oil share is down 14.73% this year. Eco-Atlantic Nigeria's Manhattan is under construction on land reclaimed from the ocean. Looks rather glamorous. I like this quote about an article about Nollywood. It was like I was coming from the future. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is minus 0.09% this year. Kenya's 10-year dollar bonds on the 4th of Jan were trading above 9%, and I said that was as much a no-brainer as one-year Treasury bills at 23%. The 10-year dollar euro bond is trading at a yield to maturity of 8.42%. Mumia Sugar has reported a first half loss after tax of 1.585 billion shillings. Net revenue was up 11.3%. Finance costs spiked 93.423%, loss before tax up 9.04% at 2.26 billion, loss after tax 1.585 billion, cash and cash equivalents minus 2.05 billion. So they've got a cash crunch going on there. Interesting commentary coming out of them talking about the sugar industry continuing to experience a shortage of sugar cane. The Western Kenya sugar belt, effective proliferation of mills created competition for the available cane. Saying factory efficiency, high unit cost of production, raw material shortage and low product prices continue to be the main challenges facing the company. High interest rates cope with the depreciated Kenyan shilling adversely affected the company in terms of high cost of finance and foreign currency exchange losses. Sugar produced was 18% higher than in the similar period. No exports made to the national grid because of a dispute with Kenya Power, so no power export revenue. Revenue from ethanol increased by 16%. Revenue from water sales decreased by 37%. They're saying that looking to restructure existing long-term loans involving a rescheduling of repayments to 7 years, inclusive of a 2-year moratorium, and they're collaborating with the government of Kenya for additional funding of 2 billion shillings. They need capital and they need cheaper capital. The firm pulls the plug on 15 billion shilling Kinangop wind farm project. The impact of the initial civil commotion has not been resolved, while further incidents have occurred, creating an unsafe environment for the team to implement the project. That's disappointing news. Norfund, Old Mutual and Macquarie were of the financiers of that project. Stepping ashore was like entering Pasolini's Arabian Nights. Lamu Town is a medieval labyrinth so perfectly intact it was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2001. The voyage to Lamu, an exotic island off the east coast of Africa, unfolds like an opium dream. After flying to Nairobi, I took a propeller plane to a tiny airstrip set among lush mangroves 2 degrees below the equator. There, 2 Swahili boatmen, Captain Hassan and Titus, escorted me to a nearby dhow, crafted from wood and favoured in myth by the likes of Sinbad the Sailor, as the distinctive triangular sail filled with a gentle breeze the mysterious buildings of the island's main township rose like a mirage on the horizon, a jumble of ancient whitewashed mansions, mosques, palm trees, and Bougainvillea, all presided over by the stone turrets of an Omani fortress. Put up a photograph of a villa at the far end of Schiller with sweeping views of the harbour. In the 90s, Princess Caroline of Monaco and Prince Ernst August of Hanover owned real estate in Schiller. Kenya shilling, 6-month high, 101.73. Nairobi all-share fell 0.75% yesterday. It's down 4.16% year-to-date. NSE 20 is down 5.61% year-to-date, outperforming most other indices on the continent. Once again, thank you for stopping by.